In this episode, we're mixing two things that have gotten a lot of interest lately on the channel. One is North American corn recipes, and the other one is eels. That's right, we're gonna be working with eels. Thanks for joining us today. So located just here, 15 miles south of our store in northern Indiana, there's a waterway, a river, and it's called the Eel River. There is this hidden feature right on the river that one could easily miss if they didn't know what they were looking at. This is a stone fish weir that was built by the indigenous peoples long ago. The fish weirs were used to harvest fish. They worked by funneling migratory fish into a single point of the river, where basket traps were placed to collect the fish. And in our research, we found two different 18th century travel journals, including that of John Heckewelder, a Moravian missionary who lived among the Lenape people. These journals mentioned the Eel River Indians, the native peoples whose name was derived from this very same river. So we're pleased today to present a traditional food that was likely enjoyed by native peoples and settlers alike. We're especially excited about this dish because of its possible connections to the history of this area, history that's right under our feet right here in northern Indiana. So what we're doing here today is another take on succotash. We have done two different episodes on succotash, a summer succotash and a fall succotash, but this is just another kind of variation on it. But this one's got a little different ingredients. Now the main ingredient on all these things, a real staple here, is corn. And we're starting off with a dried hominy corn. This corn has already been processed in a process that the Native Americans used so often that would strip the hulls and kind of sort of cause it to swell up, and then they went ahead and dried it. The corn we're using today is actually from our good friends at the Iroquois White Corn Project. Great people. The corn that they use is a variety that's over 2,000 years old, and it works really well. This is the hulled white corn product, which is a kind of a hominy corn. This is great stuff. I'll make sure to put a link down in the description below, and if you go and purchase some of this, make sure to tell them Townsends sent you. The best way to get this corn ready to go into our succotash is to actually cook this overnight in a slow cooker. You can do this without a slow cooker, but you'll need to simmer it for several hours to really get that water into it. It'll puff up, and you can really see that it's definitely changed its texture. But a slow cooker overnight on low with several inches of water over that, and it absorbs a lot of water, like say rice, takes up a lot of room. But this is, you're gonna need to pre-prep this, okay? So we can go ahead now, and for our succotash here, we've got about a gallon of water in our pot, and I'm gonna put in a goodly portion of our prepped corn. Now for the rest of our ingredients, we have squash, one of the ones that's mentioned, one of the things that's mentioned in some of these writings. We also have a root vegetable here, and some root vegetables are mentioned. This is celery root, and we'll put in a little bit of that. I mean, you could put potatoes, I suppose, or maybe a parsnip. Now I've got some heritage beans here. These are soaked beans. These are actually given to us by our good friends down at Conner Prairie in Fishers, Indiana, an amazing, wonderful historic site that's down there. That's early 19th century, wonderful site. If you're in that Indianapolis area, you really got to check the site out. They provided these beans for us. We soaked these beans overnight. Let's toss some of those in. And the last thing I'm gonna put in now is a little salt and pepper. It's not necessarily likely that, of course, Native Americans would have had salt and pepper at least early on, but we're gonna add it for our flavor. Now, before we put in our last ingredient, this is actually gonna need to simmer for a little while, or actually boil for a little while, probably 45 minutes, we're guessing, but until these root vegetables get nice and soft and the beans have softened up a little bit. And the final ingredient that's gonna go in here, it's not ready yet to put these in, but the eels get to go in next. In the writings of George Loskiel in 1794, he mentions the Lenape and the Iroquois peoples. They'd made soup or stew with corn and smoked eels. these eels are going to need to have a little prep work done to them. So I'm actually going to have Kevin come in, talk to us a little about eels, and maybe do a little work to them.
You know, we've been wanting to do an eel recipe for a long time, and frankly, we haven't, because we haven't been able to find them. And we finally found a source for smoked eels. These eels come out of Holland, and we'll put a link in the description below. I've always kind of wondered, why is there this river in Indiana called the Eel River? Because there aren't eels in Indiana. Interestingly though, there used to be. Eels are a migratory fish, and they swam thousands of miles up the tributaries to spawn, and then they would swim back out to the ocean. And so the eels in Indiana, the eels in the Eel River, would actually end up in the Gulf of Mexico. Today in North America, you're going to find eels primarily in saltwater tributaries. Eels, they were everywhere in North America. Very, very common, used to be, no longer today. I'm going to show you how to prepare one of these eels. Now, this eel is very perishable. It's smoked, yes, but probably the way that Native Americans smoked them would have been to smoke them until they were dry, a lot like a jerky. So we're going to use what we have. So here we go. I'm going to start by taking one of these eels. Now these eels have already been gutted, so I'm going to start just by cutting their heads off. I'm going to cut behind the small fin right here. You can save these for later for like soup, things like that. I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to run the knife right along the backbone. The rib bones are very, very fine, and we're probably just going to end up with those in our meat, and you probably won't even know that they're there, all the way to the tail. Now this eel is already fully cooked, and so it's very delicate. So if you're using an eel like this, you're going to have to be careful with this process. Now beyond this, because those rib bones are so fine, I'm not going to worry about them. I'm going to try and get to our spine, and I'm just going to pull this spine out, try and save as much meat as I can. Now I have these two fillets, a little rough, but they'll do for our soup. Now, you can leave the skin on, and you'll get more of that of the fish flavor and the smoky flavor in your soup. I think John's going to thank me later for doing this, by the way. I'm going to go on ahead and cut the meat off of the skin, and it's real easy to do. And I'm just going to leave it there, and I'm going to cut it into chunks. And we're going to get some real nice smoky flavor from some of that meat. So our eel meat is ready to be added to the soup.
I'm going to go ahead and put the eel skins in just for about 10 minutes or so to release some of that flavor, and then we'll pull them back out, a bit like a bay leaf. And now in goes the meat. Now this is really only going to need to cook for another 5 minutes or so. And now at the very end here, we're going to put in just a little chives at the very top, and now it's almost ready to serve. Here it is. It's time to test this out. I've got Kevin here to help me out because, I mean, eel chowder. We'll find out. Or, I mean, eel succotash.
Yeah, succotash. So there you go.
So let's give this a taste.
Wow. You know, a little more salt, little more pepper.
The eel really held together. Got a great texture. In fact, there's all kinds of textures here.
You have the corn underneath.
That hominy flavor.
And there's a beautiful broth.
Yeah, it turns out with a beautiful broth. You know, we went ahead and put those skins in there, and you could see the oils come right up to the top of this. So this is a nice, you know, rich with those oils that brought in a lot of the flavor and gave it a nice rich broth. We went ahead and took those skins out. but it did not have any, we don't have any, really, this is not fishy at all.
Not at all.
Not fishy
Not at all.
So great flavors and this great connection, not only to North America and these different cultures coming together, because eel is very common in the European foodways as well as the Native American. And succotash was definitely one of those foods that was, adopted by the Europeans that came to North America.
This makes me appreciate very much the history of our local area. It's like history under our feet. I knew of the Eel River ever since I've lived here. I never knew the connection, the historic connection,
right,
and where that name came from, and to be able to actually taste this food that likely would have been eaten in one variation or another right here is just really amazing. If you don't have eel, I'm thinking, even herring or even an anchovy, I think you could get away with this.
Some of that similar.
The oiliness, because I say oiliness, but that just contributes to the broth, the flavor of the broth. This is not an overly oily at all. So
very easy to make. This takes a little bit of time, but anything you want to do that turns out, really good, it takes time. So take the time, try to get some eel, definitely get some of this corn because it is really, really good. And you can make this amazing dish. I want to thank you for all your tremendous support that you give us in so many different ways. When you watch our videos or purchase things from us, it's an incredible thing to be able to have folks like you support us. So thank you so much for that. And I want to thank you for coming along with us as we experiment, as we try out these really, really interesting things, as we savor the flavors and the aromas of the 18th century.